7 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone, so I'm thrilled to get started. I know most of you, but I'm Karen Wade, who is thrilled tonight to welcome Don Wiley, who's our storyteller. I've known Don for many years. He's a great friend and has been joining us for the last couple of months online. But did you know that this Michigan-born Southern California resident is actually a former district director for the U.S. Department of Labor and is a retired U.S. Naval commander, and is actually one of the most peace-loving friends that I have. So I'm thrilled to have Don this evening. He's an evangelist who will be giving us a spiritual practice opportunity to begin with, and then launch right into his before, during, and after story of the Carlsbad, California Church in the Park. So Don, all yours. And thank you again for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I was privileged to visit the Plano Stone Church as part of the bus tour last October or September, whenever that was. And so I'm very good friends with the pastor at the mission congregation, which is very close. And so I usually talk with her every month. But tonight I wanted to kind of focus on the idea of mission. Novel, isn't it? That's what we all are really a part of. And I wanted to use a scripture, and I'm reading from just one verse from Matthew 25, verse 40, and it's from the First Nations version, which I have found very helpful and enlightening. And it's quoting here, it says, "I speak from my heart. Whatever you did for the least important of my fellow human beings who needed help, you did for me." And that really kind of puts in perspective a lot of questions and issues in the world today, and the focus of a lot of Jesus' ministry. He really focused on those that were on the edge, those that were in need, those that were suffering. And so the kind of question I have just to meditate on for just a few minutes is, what is our mission? Individually, as a congregation, as a family, however you want to look at yourself. Or you could ask, what do you feel called to do? Not just experience, observe, but do. Who do you feel called to serve? Do you know anyone who is in need? This is really the story of the Park Church. And I thought for a meditative time to think, I had a couple of hymns in mind, but I finally latched on to Come and Bring Light. And so let me see if I can bring that up.
You should be able to share.
I just have to find what I need to share. Zoom gets in the way for lots of times for me. So I may need to bring it up. and then get it out. Hopefully I can. Let me see if I can take another look at this and do it again. Well, I see some of my Alabama buddies on here. No, this isn't going to work for me. Darn. Thought I had it figured out. Okay.
Seth, if Don gave you Witch Beyond the Walls hymn of this, could you pull that?
Let me read the hymn.
Don, if you go
Yeah.
back to what you had up just a moment ago, I think it was on that other tab. I saw it. It was Come and, is it Come and Bring Light?
Yes.
Share, do what you did, pull up what you had previously. And then if you look, I see the tab there.
Okay.
In your browser, if you look at one of the tabs says Come in, and there's a B.
I'm not seeing it.
Okay, let me see if I can find it on. I'll just Google it. Do you want to keep sharing and we'll go back to this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got it. I can probably put it in for you.
I want the alternate version. There's 3 different versions of it. So
Oh,
I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, Sally. My goodness. Haven't seen you in a long time. So my real question personally and for everyone as an individual is about calling and about mission. It really is the point or the place that God and that Jesus tries to enter our lives. And he did it out of love and out of desire to encourage, strengthen, and allow. And a friend of mine just shared a quote with me the other day that I needed to hear. You're stronger than you think. You're braver than you feel. I am continually reminded that I'm human, just like now. Best laid plans don't always happen the way you want. And I just finished my taxes today with the assistance of my son, who lives in Seattle. And my technical abilities were definitely short. So it has been fascinating for me to experience the challenges of getting a little older. And then I have a birthday next Monday, so it's even more pronounced. But we are one of this hymn, Come and Bring Light, really calls us to be that instrument for God to help those people in need, those people who are struggling.
Don, I have that video if you want me to share it.
I would appreciate that. And we can
Okay.
just kind of meditate for that three minutes.
Come and bring light to a people in darkness. once again. To the suffering illness, open our eyes. To the strap by addiction, open our eyes. To those lost or forgotten, open our eyes. Teach us compassion and love. Come and bring light to a people in darkness. Come set us free from the chains we have made. We are your people, the flock that you tend. Lord, open our eyes once again.
Thank you. I grew up in Michigan, but I've been out in Southern California since 1969. The Navy brought me out here, and I enjoyed it so much I didn't want to go back to the cold winters. So I've been in San Diego area for all those years, and the church was very vibrant back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and even the 90s. And there were two congregations in the north part of San Diego County, Escondido and Vista, and they both had nice churches. The Escondido congregation still attends every Sunday, still has meetings, not a lot of people. But the Vista congregation, virtually everybody moved out or somehow stopped coming. And so they sold their church. And that was in 2003. And it sold for a pretty good price, just under $1 million. And they looked for another church for a short time. And then they decided they were going to rent. And so back in 2003, they rented a conference room in a hotel and did that for about 5 months. And then they realized, oh, we got some people that live in the city of Carlsbad, and we can use them and rent in Carlsbad cheap. So they began to do that in 2004. And they rented a place called the Harding Center. They just went on Sundays, brought in the piano, brought in the keyboard, and there were 20 to 25 people that would join them. And during that time, they encountered their first homeless family. Her name was Peggy. She was an older woman, and her adult son, probably in his 30s, was also there, and they were living out of a shopping cart. And the facility we were in was glass. And I met them, and because I would go over there fairly regularly, and even though I was a member of the Escondido congregation. So they invited Peggy and her son in to share with them in church, and got acquainted with them, and tried to look and see what can we do for them. And they helped them in any way they could. One first thing they did was help them get all the benefits that they were supposed to have, Social Security and Medicare and that type of thing. And then they began to try to find a place for them to live. And so it got them a little bit aware of the situation. They really didn't want to be in this building. They wanted to be in the park, McGee Park, which is just 2 blocks away from the ocean. And it was a really nice park, and it had a church in it, basically a one-room church. I think it was like the first Catholic church that was in the area. But they didn't get in there until 2010. So they had been quite a while just being themselves and this one mother and son. But at 2010, they were allowed to rent this historical church. It was just after this time that Ron Harmon's Leading Congregations in Mission program reached us. And Terry Reed was our mission center president, and they approached Carlsbad to be one of the congregations, and they said, well, we will if Don Wiley can be our guide. Obviously, I was their friend. And so I said, yes, I'd be glad to do that. And the first retreat we had, we went up to Buckhorn Camp, which is up in near Idlewild, California. It's at 6,000 foot level. And we had our retreats there. And there were about 8, maybe 9 congregations that were part of the LCM. And we were in round tables in our big peace center, and we were contemplating ideas of what we might be able to do as a mission. And Norio Morota, we were discussing, and he said, we have a lot of homeless in that park. Maybe we could try to address that. And, I said, stand up, tell them. And he did. And the response was, oh, okay, no big deal. They didn't really, nobody had been there to see it. But their comment, they began to talk as a group, a leadership group. And there were about 9 or 10 of us. The membership in the congregation, attending membership at that time wasn't much more than that main group. But they began, when they came back from that retreat, to think about exactly how we're going to go about doing this. They had coffee and donuts every Sunday, and they would even open the doors to the park and stand out on the side, on the porch area, and have the coffee and donuts, and sometimes carry on a conversation with somebody, but nobody would come in to join them. And so they actually had to take a cup of coffee and a donut and go out and sit down in the park with them and say, here. And that was a very, very meager beginning. And it didn't really make a dent on what they saw, but it was a beginning. And it didn't just bloom all of a sudden, but they shared the coffee and donuts for some time, and then they said, and the people would come into the church for 2 reasons: charge their phones and sleep. It's a safe place to sleep. If you're living on the street, fortunately, I've never had to do that, but my son did for several years. And it is just very, very scary. Even doesn't matter your size, doesn't matter who you are, it's scary and it's difficult. And so they decided, well, these people are hungry. They don't just want coffee and donuts. So they started this idea of feeding them. And now might be a good time to play the video of what's this called? Opening Our Doors, Inviting Them In. Yeah. This is only 4.5 minutes.
My name is Kathy Marota, and I'm the co-pastor of the Carlsbad Community of Christ, affectionately known as the Park Church. Our congregation was involved in leading congregations in mission. And we saw a video called The Table.
And the table is about invitation, take the table outside and invite people in.
The first Sunday that we were here renting this building, we opened up the doors after the church service and we saw all these people in the park. And Norio, my husband, says,
you know what? I'll make a pot of coffee and a dozen donuts. And that's how we started it. We started one day and maybe 1 or 2 people came.
That was 5 years ago. And now this is just involved, not into a community of Christ event, but now into a community event.
You know, we call them friends in the park, all these people. It's really rewarding for us. They are so appreciative. We're trying to build relationship, friendship, trust, and we didn't have any agenda when we started it.
Typical Sunday morning, our friends in the park get here about 7:30. We also partner with the AA, Alcohol Anonymous, and they come in, they meet next door to us. We make their coffee, and we make coffee for our people and our friends in the park. Then about 8:45 or so, we put out food and we have a meal, an awesome meal every Sunday morning. And then we have a church service about 10:30, and we usually stay until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so we are the park on Sunday mornings in this community.
My name is Martin. I used to be a resident of the park here, and through generosity of Community of Christ, I'm moving on from that. People from all over Carlsbad and Oceanside come here for the meal, the fellowship, and get clean clothes and everything like that. And what's amazing is most of these people, you know, when they're out using or drinking or stuff, they're fighting each other all, you know, tooth and nail over every little thing. Here they behave themselves, so that helps them a little bit with that. They even clean up after themselves here, which is amazing.
It's a church service that some of these guys and girls will go to. Even if you just leave the door open, they feel they're in church. And all the help that they do here, they hand them blankets and food and a pat on the back. They even let my dog in the church. Yeah. I've always been, if she can't go, I can't, you know, it's not for me.
For 3 years, I lived in my car with Gus, and I found Kathy and Norio. There's a need. I knew the people of the street, the friends of the park, as they call them. I decided to help Kathy and Norio, and I still do it. And we come every Sunday morning. I get here at 7. I do all the coffee and set up the church, and then do the food and set out the clothes. And it's just people need to get together. And maybe you don't have an idea. What can you do? You know, anybody can reach out and help. Anybody.
Well, I think that church as a congregation has got a whole new vision now. There's an excitement about it. Even though a lot of us are seniors and in our retired years, we're amazed at all the things that begin to happen when we put our hearts and souls into something like this, and the little miracles that seem to happen every day.
On a personal note, I never thought at my age this is what I'd be doing in my life. When it rains at night, I think of our friends in the streets. They email me, they tell me things that are going on. You know, it's just easy to know that I can't do everything. But as one person told me the other day, one of our friends in the park, he says, it is amazing what we all have done together here because we support each other, and we come here on Sundays because we know somebody genuinely cares. That's why I'm here.
So that really gives you a sense of, in its heyday, when it was really an exciting and plentiful thing. Ron and Barb Harmon came out. They served meals. Steve and Kathy Vesey even came out and helped serve meals on one Sunday. And it was just a really remarkable experience. There's lots of stories I could probably go on. I was going to give a sermon there one Sunday morning, and we had the chairs lined up like you would in a regular church. And so I'm sitting in the front, and I'm just about ready to go up to the podium and give the sermon. And Shirley, a golden retriever, who wasn't his owner, her owner was not homeless, but he came to the park because his wife was Catholic, and there's a Catholic church 2 blocks away. And so he came with us. And so I'm just about getting ready to stand up, and Shirley walks up. She was in the second row. She came around at the end of the row and came right up to me and put her paw on my knee and just sat there for a minute. And I thought to myself, if this isn't the Holy Spirit coming to greet me and encourage me, I don't know what I'm talking about. It was a marvelous experience. Dogs were welcome in the congregation. Everybody was welcome in the congregation. And so another thing that was significant to me about the park is, and initially we talked about them and us. And I was in a meeting with the leadership group, and I said, no. We can't talk about the homeless as them. That's a separation word. We have to somehow talk about us. And so that's when they began to refer to the park people as friends without homes. At that time, they also referred to them friends in the park. It really became family, and it was challenging there were only 5 of the homeless, friends of the homeless, that became members of the church. Martin, that came on, the fairly heavy set guy, he was baptized in the ocean. That's a challenge in itself, but he has passed away since. And you saw a woman with a parrot, that's Davy, and her partner, Ken, was they were there all the time. But Kenny he couldn't shake the addiction, and so he passed away during that time as well. Then COVID hit, and everything stopped because COVID. We could not meet in the church. We couldn't meet in the park. We could not serve food. Everything stopped. It was so very abrupt and very disheartening. So for a period of almost 9 years, this congregation of 12 people held nothing back. They shared everything they had and gave any way they could. Another story that really kind of says something, and we were done. We had everything cleaned up, and there were about 7 or 8 of us members talking in the center of the room, and this woman comes in. I have no idea of age, probably in her 30s, and we said, "We're sorry you missed all the food and everything." That didn't bother her. She just came up and met with us, and she was embraced, hugged, and we prayed over her. We didn't know anything about her. I couldn't tell you her name, but she was loved, and what we had, we gave to her in acceptance, recognition. We see you, we love you. And she left. Didn't see her again for months. And about 6 months later, similar situation. We were all done. She comes in. And she says, "I just came back today to tell you something." Your acceptance of me and welcoming me changed my life. And that experience of welcoming, unconditional, being seen, being listened to and prayed over, changed her life. She left then, that time 6 months ago, and came back because her life had changed, and she wanted us to know that it was because of us. Dick Foster, I don't know if any of you knew Dick. He was an appointee for quite a few years. Dick and Julie Foster. They still live in Carlsbad. Their kids are out there now. He wrote an article in the Herald some time back, and I couldn't find it, the actual article. He shared, and he had an experience on one of the Sundays in which he saw Jesus. And he wasn't the only one. And they talked about it afterwards, and they concluded it had to be Jesus. Didn't know names, didn't know, but the presence, the spirit, and everything really ministered to them in that recognition of the power of the Holy Spirit working in their lives. So I could go on and on and on. They still today know where these people are. One of them, Dennis Smith, he wants to go to reunion every year. He's a member of the church now. Norio baptized him at reunion, and I wasn't there. That was 2 years ago. But I worked with him at our week-long work week at Buckhorn Camp, and we became good friends. So I'm taking him back home, and I'm on it. I say, here's a $20 bill. He said, no, don't give me $20 bill. I'll just take and buy a bottle. I said, okay, well then how much can I give you? And he said, oh, 10 will do. I won't waste that. And it's that kind of honesty and fellowship. And is he changed? Is he, a good? No, he's out of the park. I mean, he's not homeless anymore, but and he's a helper. These people are friends. We keep track. We know what's going on with them, and they actually join in our business meetings when they can. So it's been a phenomenal experience being a part of that. And the neighborhood didn't like us. And Terry Reed came down, and we had a meeting with the neighbors. And his conclusion was this small congregation has a calling. They feel that they're called to minister to the friends of the park. And that had an impact on the neighborhood. And the number of people that they actually helped, it was significant. Tammy Perryman helped us a lot out there when she was in California, and very bonding, very, very much family. So I can answer questions or something like that if you want, but this is an ongoing. They still contribute to other organizations that are helping the Friends Without Homes by contributions, by buying a dozen Costco pizzas and delivering them, by working with organizations that provide housing, that provide showers and washing machines and things like that. So they're still very involved. They just can't provide the meetings and the meals like they used to. Park Church.
Hey, do we have any questions for Don?
Don, this is Karen.
Yep.
I believe that you're also partnering with some other groups in Carlsbad with your service to the unhoused today. Is that correct?
Yes, they are. There's about 5 organizations in the Carlsbad Oceanside area that have very specific missions of feeding, of providing places for showers and laundry, and so they provide tangible things for them, like food, canned goods, and that type of thing. But they also provide resources. They'll donate $5,000 here, $2,000 there to help those organizations continue. And so they have a very close and working relationship with all the organizations they dealt with before too.
I think that's so important to remember the value of partnering with other religious organizations and other civic organizations in your community, because the combined effort can be so much greater than just what little we can do. And I know that you're still providing so many of the same services through these partnerships that you
Yep.
did. Just an aside, I was fortunate enough to come down and share in the park church several times, and it was an incredible experience. It was one of my happiest experiences of doing church. Also, thinking about other opportunities in your area uh, of innovative ways of worshiping. I know that you're involved with Beach Church too.
Yes.
Tell us a little about Beach Church, which is something that's happening in San Diego County.
Yeah, it's about 10 miles south of the Park Church, and they go on Communion Sunday, the first Sunday of the month. They will. I will. I've been there quite a bit. They go down to a beach. It's called Moonlight Beach. We used to go there when my kids were growing up, and that was our favorite beach to go to. Cliffs all along the seashore for part of it, and then beach that you can walk on. And so they'll have a service of anywhere from 10 to 20. I think the most we've ever had is like 25 people in the sand along the beach. And they and they'll worship and share communion. And then once the service is over, they'll go walk the beach, usually in groups of 2 or 3. And that's your chat time. You get your steps in, and you can do some interesting things. Easter, they met, and they had about over 20 people. And one of the things they did was make a cross. And I have a picture, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well, but you can see the cross with flowers
Wonderful.
in it. And there's the group, not all of the group, but most of the group that was there. And you can see a nice sandy beach. That's not the way it naturally is. They dredge up and bring in tons and tons and tons of sand, because the shore will wash all the sand out eventually, and it gets down to rock again. That is a getaway for some people, and there's consistently about a dozen people that show up every week or every Communion Sunday.
Well, this is just a reminder that there is many ways to do church. Are there any other questions of Don before we get into our reflection questions? If not, Mags, do you want to pull up those questions and take it from here?
So our questions for today are discussion questions. We've got 3. So if you feel prompted, I'll read those. I'll read through those and I'll give you a minute. And if you want to respond to one in particular, you can. So our first question is, have you or your congregation ever shared with people experiencing homelessness? What opportunities do you see in your home or church community to reach out to this population? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is, what stories from church history or scripture inspire you to be involved in helping the underserved in your community? I think I'll start with sharing an opportunity I had this past December to attend there was it was like a peace colloquy sort of gathering in Portland, Oregon. It was close to home, so it was easy enough for me to get to. And the topic of discussion was to talk about how we could address homelessness in our mission centers and our congregations. And we talked to some people who were working in Portland. The Portland congregation is part of an initiative between multiple churches called Family Promise, where they offer their building as a shelter. I think theirs is it daily, a day shelter? I think it might be a day shelter, or they have night shelters and day shelters. And the day shelters are held at different churches who volunteer. So every week, a church will take on the duty of acting as a day shelter or a night shelter. And families will come with their children. They often have small children and their pets. If they allow pets, they try to allow pets, and they spend the day at the shelter so that, mom or dad or both can go to work and then they can come home to the shelter, be with their children, be together as a family, and then they go to a night shelter, which is another church building that just is there for them to sleep at. And these shelters, these rotating shelters, from church to church, and they're run by volunteers from each congregation and other congregations or churches who want to participate but maybe can't offer a building for shelter. And the Portland congregation is one of those congregations that offers the building and actually shares some of their facility for office space for, I think, their local Family Promise chapter. And that's been something that's inspiring to me, especially as a neighbor. I mean, this is a program that goes nationwide. It's called Family Promise if you're interested. But it's inspiring to me as a neighboring congregation to Portland, because we recently had to close down our food bank because the staffing was very difficult on our congregation. We couldn't get the volunteers. It's also on a very busy road in Salem, Oregon, and held up traffic, and a lot of the neighbors weren't very happy. So we're trying to figure out new ways to help and to be present in the community. We do have a lot of homeless people who are experiencing homelessness in Salem, and it's something that we would like to address and help address. So that's one thing that we're looking into is Family Promise. And I mean, absolutely, if you're interested, if that sounds like something that your congregation could do, I totally recommend it, because you don't have to have the volunteers. They will find volunteers. They will help you find volunteers. So if you have the building space that can act as a shelter, that's something you can offer. If you want to volunteer, and they're hosting a shelter at a different congregation, a different denomination, you can help by volunteering. Family Promise is a nationwide initiative that's been really cool. So that's I'm not doing much with them yet, but that's something that we've been looking forward to in our congregation.
Our, our youngest son and his wife were involved with Family Promise for several months. Actually, I think 2 or 3 years. She worked for another church in this area, and that's how they came across Family Promise. Our own congregation in Robertsdale, Alabama, has a church member who lives under a bridge. We tried to get him to live in a town about 20 miles south of the church, and he wanted nothing to do with it. He'd grown up in the town where our congregation is located. So the congregation has for, I don't know how many years now, 3 or 4, had a line item in our budget, family assistance. And I don't know the details of any of this because I've gotten old and don't get out so much. But I think we provide most of his food. So there are all kinds of opportunities, and each situation is bound to be different.
As many of you know, I moved the Chicago area from Southern California just a year ago. And another example in the Pacific Southwest International Mission Center that I personally was involved with was once again a congregation that no longer exists. It was the Old Covina congregation that they renamed Welcome Home. And they had their worship service on Sunday evenings. I also frequently went and shared with them on Sunday evenings. And following the church service, they had a meal and they welcomed in people from the community and actually allowed people who lived in their cars to park in their parking lot for safety. There were some issues with the local police because of that, but it was an opportunity. But the other program that they were involved with was called Love Lunches. Don made reference to Terry Reed, who had been our Mission Center president. Unfortunately, as many of you who may have known Terry are aware, he was killed in a tragic car accident some time ago. But his wife, Linda, before she moved to Independence, began this Love Lunches program on Wednesdays. We put together sack lunches, about 25 sack lunches, sometimes a little more than that. I was involved with this program for about a year before Linda moved back to Independence. And we would take them in a van and go around to where we knew that the people who were living on the street would be at lunchtime. And we got to know them on a personal level. It wasn't just, going to parks, or we also, like Justice mentioned, there were people who were living under bridges and we went to them under their bridges. But we also went to public libraries. There are so many different examples of people who are living without permanent housing at this point. And I will remember this single mother who would meet her children who had come from school at the public library in the afternoon after they got out of school, and we would bring their lunches to the public library. So there's so many ways that can bring about conditions of homelessness. There's so many, there's not one characteristic of those people without homes. And I got to know many of these people personally, and it was an incredible experience.
Park Church, every year they would bring 2 homeless to a reunion with them. So that was, that was a remarkable remarkable experience because there they some of them had habits that they had to hide, but they'd sober up for that week. But they experienced community and family like they had never experienced it before, and they still want to come, even though we don't. You know, they several of them joined the church because they saw that type of situation there, and it's phenomenal what reunion can do.
For a while, Open Arms had moved into the old Speaks Funeral Home that's right next to the auditorium and temple, if you're aware of that area. Anyway, they're right on the heart of Independence and the headquarters of the church. And there's a lot of homeless around that area. And we were having 6 to 12 homeless people show up and share with us on Sunday morning worship. We'd share food, clothing, other things with them, other assistance as we could. There was one gentleman, he'd take out the trash. He'd gather up all the trash and pick up stuff and take it out for us. It wasn't that he didn't have family support. They tried to get him off the street, but he wouldn't go off the street. For him, he had to be on the street. That was just his temperament. But unfortunately, he died. And so we as a congregation held a memorial service for him. And his family was all Catholic, and they were absolutely astonished that we would do that. And they came to the service and shared with us, and out of gratitude, they brought tons and tons of clothes for the clothing closet, almost too much to deal with. But anyway, that was very successful while we were there. But then we were required as a congregation to move out of that building, and then we kind of lost the connection because we were no longer close to them like we were in that setting. But again, it was an opportunity that kind of mushroomed just because of the location and the willingness of the congregation to open their doors and their hearts.
A comment and a question for Don. I'm looking at the third question here about stories from church history. And the ministry that you've described and the ministries for people experiencing homelessness that other folks have described strike me as being very much in the spirit of Zion and a reflection of the principle of, those who have surplus, using it to aid members of the community who are poorer. And at a really practical level, I'm curious, Don, and maybe you don't know this, but I found myself, looking at the video and thinking about, like, practically speaking, the resources required to maintain that kind of ministry. The clothing that's being donated, the literally just the money that's required to provide the food and so on. Like, I'm curious, can you give us a sense of, like, how much money are we talking here that the congregation had to raise, and was that a challenge for them? What kinds of Was it purely just the members? Were you also being able to get funding or resources from other places?
Funding was not a real issue because they had resources, so it wasn't a matter of funding. It was more a matter of volunteers or where do you store things. So they did have to get, a storage facility, and because the clothing and all the paraphernalia that they had to bring every Sunday became too much, and it was very taxing, particularly on Norio and Kathy. But people volunteered. Other organizations, other churches even brought food in for the feeding of 80 people. And they took turns, and they rotated it initially between the 12 families or people that were part of the congregation. But they eventually, other people saw what was happening and came and said, what can we do? How can we help? And would actually make meals, large meals. And so it wasn't so much finances because they they still have a very large coffer of money and are trying to figure out how to spend it. So that's their challenge right now as a group of about, well, they managed to get 7 or 8 people to a business meeting, and that's about it. But they are still very involved with the other organizations, and they share what they have with those other organizations, and the kid comes back to them as well. So it's a lot of this working with other organizations that makes it doable, because it's not all placed on 5 people in one congregation.
And John Charles, going back to the welcome home love lunches and also the meals that they served. Linda Reed was a master at knowing how to get donations. She had a skill of going to organizations, going to companies, asking for supplies, both food, the equipment that was needed in the kitchens. So it's a skill, and it's a coordination that some people are much better at than others. But there are ways of managing the expense. In the case of Carlsbad, the old Vista congregation, they sold their church and opted not to buy a new church, so they still have funds that they can use. So, you can do church without a building, which they're still doing. But in other cases, with what Welcome Home did, is just finding resources and being very inventive.
My last 10 years of employment, I worked about 6 or 7 miles from that Welcome Home congregation. And so I was able to go there on Wednesdays or that type of thing, and didn't get as involved as some people did, but definitely supported them. It does take someone willing to lead to do that kind of a ministry, regardless where it's at, whether it's in Independence at the old funeral home, or whether it's in an abandoned church, or whether it is outdoors. You've got to have somebody that is willing to lead it.
Don, thank you again so much for sharing with us tonight, inspiring us. And I know that you're continuing to fulfill the mission of the Carlsbad congregation. So thank you.
Yep.
And Megs?
I just wanted to highlight a chat comment from Matt, who has shared a scripture from Doctrine and Covenants 163, verse 4: engage in compassionate and just actions to abolish poverty and end needless suffering. And I just wanted to echo that because Matt wasn't able to share vocally, and so I'm going to share share his chat. I think it's a great scripture to end on. And it just shows how important it is that we consider these our calling. And maybe our roles are different. Like Don said, it takes one person to decide to stand up and lead. And some of us, I am, for one, I am not, I am not a leader. I like to help with logistics behind the scenes, but I'm not somebody who stands up often. And but these are things that I'm very passionate about because we are called to it, not only by the Doctrine and Covenants, but by the actions of Jesus Christ, our exemplar, in seeing how he treated those underserved in the community. He always stood on their side, and that is the example that we should be following. And I love that example. It's what keeps me coming back to Christianity, is that example of leading, or example of standing with the underprivileged and the marginalized, that example of Christ. Even though I think we all see examples of congregations and Christians who don't do that. And it's something that we struggle with now in this world. So I just want to echo that and just express my gratitude for being part of a community, part of a church that really takes that call to heart. So, John Charles, I wanted to turn it over to you just for a moment to talk about next week, or not next week, but our next meeting, which is on May 6th. It's not quite in 2 weeks, right? Because the extra week. So, John Charles, do you have anything to say?
Sure. So our next worship service will be a communion service. We're in the season of Easter, moving toward Pentecost. And so in light of that, we'll focus on the sacred story of Jesus promising his disciples another comforter who will continue to teach them. And then we'll think about that story in light of our enduring principle of continuing revelation. And there will be time for people to share stories of continuing revelation that are meaningful to you, either stories of how you've seen the church benefit from continuing revelation, or maybe ways in which you as an individual have received continuing revelation in some form in your life, or perhaps in the course of giving a blessing of some kind, have been a conduit of continuing revelation for others. That'll be our focus for next time.
So again, thank you all for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. Bye.
Good night.